Hey crew, it's Pitt, and I'm back with another something different. Today we're going to be looking at American history. We're going to be going through some more recent history than Plato, but these were written because Plato existed. This is the defense of the Constitution of the United States of America as posed by the people who wrote it. This was a series of letters that was published in various papers so that the people involved could better understand what was being proposed with our Constitution and why they should vote for it. And because we are such history buffs here and we believe in the dispensation of knowledge and that more people who know about things, the better off we all are, the more knowledge that we all have, the more we can all understand the fundamentals that this country was founded on. We'll be doing the Constitution after we do the Federalist Papers, but I wanted to get the Federalist Papers in there first because it really is a good rationalization of why we incorporated something new. We tried a new thing in freedom, something that has never been done before. You get to choose your own life. That is unique in the history of the planet. And so we're going to explore, as we go through these Federalist Papers, why the founders thought that it was important that we do that and how they ensured that we would be able to do that. We're going to start with the introduction here. This is coming from the guides.loc.gov. It is freely available on the internet. It is open source, right? So we're not going to have any troubles with that. Let's go ahead and get in and read the first part, and then we'll get into the first of the letters. The Federalist, commonly referred to as the Federalist Papers, is a series of 85 essays written by Alexander Hamilton, John Jay, and James Madison between October of 1787 and May of 1788. The essays were published anonymously under the pen name Publius in various New York State newspapers of the time. The Federalist Papers were written and published to urge New Yorkers to ratify the proposed United States Constitution, which was drafted in Philadelphia in the summer of 1787. In lobbying for adoption of the Constitution over the existing Articles of Confederation, the essay explains particular provisions of the Constitution in detail. For this reason, and because Hamilton and Madison were each members of the Constitutional Convention, the Federalist Papers are often used today to help interpret the intentions of those drafting the Constitution. The Federalist Papers were published primarily in two New York State newspapers, the New York Packet and the Independent Journal. They were reprinted in other newspapers in New York State and in several large cities in other states. A bound edition was provided. That's the history that we need to know as we get into this, right? This first letter is from Alexander Hamilton. It is in the Independent Journal to the people of the state of New York. After an unequivocal experience of the inefficiency of the subsisting federal government, you are called upon to deliberate on a new Constitution for the United States of America. The subject speaks its own importance, comprehending in its consequences nothing less than the existence of the Union, the safety and welfare of the parts in which it is composed, the fate of an empire, in many respects the most interesting in the world. It has been frequently remarked that it seems to have been reserved to the people of this country, by their conduct and example, to decide the important question, whether societies of men are really capable or not of establishing good government from reflection and choice, and whether they are forever destined to depend for their political constitutions on accident and force. If there be any truth in the remark, the crisis at which we are arrived may, with propriety, be regarded as the era in which that decision is to be made, and a wrong election on the part we shall act may, in this view, deserve to be considered as the general misfortune of mankind. This ideal will add the inducements of philanthropy to those of patriotism, to heighten the solicitude which all considerate and good men must feel for the event. Happy will it be if our choice should be directed by a judicious estimate of our true interests, unperplexed, and unbiased by considerations not connected with the public good. But this is a thing more ardently to be wished than to seriously be expected. The plan offered to our deliberations affects too many particular interests, innovates upon too many local institutions, not to involve in its discussion a variety of objects foreign to its merits, and of views, passions, and prejudices little favorable to the discovery of truth. Among the most formidable of the obstacles which the new Constitution will have to encounter may readily be distinguished the oblivious interest of a certain class of men in every state to resist all changes which may hazard a diminution of the power, emolument, and consequences of the office they hold under the state establishments, and the perverted ambition of another class of men who will either hope to aggrandize themselves by the confusions of their country, or will flatter themselves with fairer prospects of elevation from the subdivision of the empire into several partial confederacies than from its union under one government. It is not, however, my design to dwell upon observations of this nature. I am well aware that it would be disingenuous to resolve indiscriminately the opposition of any set of men, merely because their situations might subject them to suspicion, into interested or ambitious views. Candor will oblige us to admit that even such men may be actuated by upright intentions, and it cannot be doubted that much of the opposition which has made its appearance, or may hereafter make its appearance, will spring from sources, blameless at least, if not respectable, the honest errors of minds led astray by preconceived jealousies and fears. So numerous indeed, and so powerful are the causes which serve to give false bias to the judgment, that we, upon many occasions, see wise and good men on the wrong as well as on the right side of questions of the first magnitude to society. This circumstance, if duly attended to, would furnish a lesson of moderation to those who are ever so much persuaded of their being in the right in any controversy. And a further reason for caution in this respect might be drawn from the reflection that we are not always sure that those who advocate the truth are influenced by purer principles than their antagonists. Ambition, avarice, personal animosity, party opposition, and many other motives, not more laudable than these, are apt to operate as well upon those who support as those who oppose the right side of a question. Were there not even these inducements to moderation, nothing could be more ill-judged than that intolerant spirit which has, at times, characterized political parties. For in politics, as in religion, it is equally absurd to aim at making proselytes by fire and sword. Heresies in either can rarely be cured by persecution. And yet, however just these sentiments will be allowed to be, we have already sufficient indications that it will happen in this as in all former cases of great national discussion. A torrent of angry and malignant passions will be let loose. To judge from the conduct of the opposite parties, we shall be led to conclude that they will mutually hope to evince the justness of their opinions, and to increase the number of converts by the loudness of their declamations and the bitterness of their invectives. An enlightened zeal for the energy and efficiency of government will be stigmatized as the offspring of a temper fond of despotic power and hostile to the principles of liberty. An over-scrupulous jealousy of danger to the rights of the people, which is more commonly the fault of the head than of the heart, will be represented as its mere pretense and artifice, the stale bait for popularity at the expense of the public good. It will be forgotten, on the one hand, that jealousy is the usual concomitant of love, and that the noble enthusiasm of liberty is apt to be infected with a spirit of narrow and illiberal distrust. On the other hand, it will be equally forgotten that the vigor of government is essential to the security of liberty, that in the contemplation of a sound and well-informed judgment, their interests can never be separated, and that a dangerous ambition more often lurks behind the specious mask for zeal for the rights of other people than under the forbidden appearance of zeal for the firmness and efficiency of government. History will teach us that the former has been found on much more certain road to the introduction of despotism than the latter, and that of those men who have overturned the liberties of republics, the greatest number have begun their career by paying an obsequious court to the people, commencing demagogues and ending tyrants. In the course of the preceding observations, I have had an eye, my fellow citizens, to putting you upon your guard against all attempts, from whatever quarter, to influence your decision in a matter of the utmost moment to your welfare, by any impressions other than those which may result from the evidence of truth. You will, no doubt, at the same time, have collected from the general scope of them that they have proceeded from a source not unfriendly to the new Constitution. Yes, my countrymen, I own to you that, after having given it an attentive consideration, I am clearly of the opinion it is your interest to adopt it. I am convinced that this is the safest course for your liberty, your dignity, and your happiness. I affect not reserves which I do not feel. I will not amuse you with an appearance of deliberation when I have decided. I frankly acknowledge to you my convictions, and I will freely lay before you the reasons on which they are founded. The consciousness of good intentions disdains ambiguity. I shall not, however, multiply professions on this head. My motives must remain in the depository of my own breast. My arguments will be open to all, and may be judged of by all. They shall, at least, be offered in a spirit which will not disgrace the cause of truth. I propose, in a series of papers, to discuss the following interesting particulars: the utility of the Union to your political prosperity, the insufficiency of the present Confederation to preserve that Union, the necessity of a government at least equally energetic with the one proposed, to the attainment of the object, the conformity of the proposed Constitution to the true principles of republican government, its analogy to your own state constitution, and lastly, the additional security which its adoption will afford to the preservation of that species of government, to liberty, and to property. In the progress of this discussion, I shall endeavor to give a satisfactory answer to all the objections which have made their appearance, that may seem to have any claim on your attention. It may perhaps be thought superfluous that to offer arguments to prove the utility of the Union, a point no doubt deeply engraved on the hearts of the great body of the people in every state, and one which it may be imagined has no adversaries. But the fact is that we already hear it whispered in the private circles of those who oppose the new Constitution, that the 13 states are of too great extent for any general system, and that we must of necessity resort to separate confederacies of distinct portions of the whole. This doctrine will, in all probability, be gradually propagated till it has votaries enough to countenance an open avowal of it. For nothing can be more evident to those who are able to take an enlarged view of the subject than the alternative of an adoption of the new Constitution or a dismemberment of the Union. It will therefore be of use to begin by examining the advantages of that Union, the certain evils, and the probable dangers to which every state will be exposed from its dissolution. This shall accordingly constitute the subject of my next address. So ends Federalist Paper number 1. I don't have a whole lot to add to these, right? They are self-contained. I am a full supporter of the Constitution of the United States and the United States. I believe that we should be 50 independent states working together as a republic, because people have differing opinions, and that is built into the system so that you can move if you do not agree with where you live, and that it would by no means diminish us if you move from one state to another state where you are more aligned. We would still have the power of your presence and your support for the country. I believe that I don't have to agree with what you do. I don't have to agree with the way you live. As long as we are together aligned with freedom, with the pursuit of happiness, and for the achievement of the American dream. And the American dream is not to have a house, it's not to have a car, it's not even to have a family. It's to have the right to determine for yourself whether you want that or not. How you want to go about getting that. It is the ability to, at any point in time, decide that you want something different and that you are willing to go after something different. That is the American dream. It is not the guarantee of a chicken in your pot. It is not the guarantee of a house over your head or lights in that house. It is the guarantee that you get to choose, that you get to pursue in the manner that you find most effective your pursuit of happiness, that you get to go and do what you want to do with your life, and you can leave a place without permission to go somewhere else. That is a unique thing in the history of the world, and something that we need to fight to preserve. Something that these men in these papers foresaw, and we are living through today. We do have people today who want to subvert the Constitution, who want to change the fundamental freedoms that are guaranteed but given by God. The Federalist Paper number 2. This is authored by John Jay in the Independent Journal to the people of the state of New York. When the people of America reflect that they are now called upon to decide a question which, in its consequences, must prove one of the most important that ever engaged their attention, their propriety of their taking a very comprehensive as well as a very serious view of, will be evident. Nothing is more certain than the indispensable necessity of government, and it is equally undeniable that whenever and however it is instituted, the people must cede to it some of their natural rights in order to vest it with requisite powers. It is well worthy of consideration, therefore, whether it would conduce more to the interests of the people of America that they should, to all general purposes, be one nation under one federal government, or that they should divide themselves into separate confederacies and give to the heads of each the same kind of powers which they are advised to place in one national government. It has, until lately, been a received and uncontradicted opinion that the prosperity of the people of America depended on their continuing firmly united, and the wishes, prayers, and efforts of our best and wisest citizens have been constantly directed to that object. But politicians now appear who insist that this opinion is erroneous, and that instead of looking for safety and happiness in union, we ought to seek it in a division of the states into distinct confederacies or sovereignties. However extraordinarily this new doctrine may appear, it nevertheless has its advocates, and certain characters who were much opposed to it formerly are at present of the number. Whatever may be the arguments or inducements which have wrought this change in the sentiments and declarations of these gentlemen, it certainly would not be wise in the people at large to adopt these new political tenets without being fully convinced that they are founded in truth and sound policy. It has often given me pleasure to observe that independent America was not composed of detached and distant territories, but that one connected, fertile, wide-spreading country was the portion of our Western Sons of Liberty. Providence has, in a particular manner, blessed it with a variety of soils and productions, and watered it with innumerable streams, for the delight and accommodation of its inhabitants. A succession of navigable waters forms a kind of chain around its borders, as if to bind it together, while the most noble rivers in the world, running at convenient distances, present them with highways for the easy communication of friendly aids, and the mutual transportation and exchange of their various commodities. With equal pleasure, I have as often taken notice that Providence has been pleased to give this one connected country to one united people, a people descended from the same ancestors, speaking the same language, professing the same religion, attached to the same principles of government, very similar in their manners and customs, and who, by their joint counsels, arms, and efforts, fighting side by side throughout a long and bloody war, have established general liberty and independence. This country and this people seem to have been made for each other, and it appears as if it was the design of Providence that an inheritance so proper and convenient for a band of brethren, united to each other by the strongest ties, should never be split into a number of unsocial, jealous, and alien sovereignties. Similar sentiments have hitherto prevailed among all orders and denominations of men among us. To all general purposes, we have uniformly been one people, each individual citizen everywhere enjoying the same national rights, privileges, and protection. As a nation, we have made peace and war. As a nation, we have vanquished our common enemies. As a nation, we have formed alliances and made treaties and entered into various compacts and conventions with foreign states. A strong sense of the value and blessings of union induced the people at a very early period to institute a federal government to preserve and perpetuate it. They formed it almost as soon as they had a political existence, nay, at a time when their habitations were in flames, when many of their citizens were bleeding, and when the progress of hostility and desolation left little room for those calm and mature inquiries and reflections which must ever precede the formation of a wise and well-balanced government for a free people. It is not to be wondered at that a government instituted in times so inauspicious should, on experiment, be found greatly deficient and inadequate to the purpose it was intended to answer. This intelligent people perceived and regretted these defects. Still continuing no less attached to the Union than enamored of liberty, they observed the danger which immediately threatened the former and more remotely the latter, and being persuaded that ample security for both could only be found in a national government more wisely framed, they, as with one voice, convened the late convention at Philadelphia to take that important subject under consideration. This convention, composed of men who possessed the confidence of the people, and many of whom had become highly distinguished by their patriotism, virtue, and wisdom, in times which tried the minds and hearts of men, undertook the arduous task. In the mild season of peace, with minds unoccupied by other subjects, they passed many months in cool, uninterrupted, and daily consultation, and finally, without having been awed by power or influenced by any passions except love for their country, they presented and recommended to the people the plan produced by their joint and very unanimous councils. Admit, for so it is the fact, that this plan is only recommended, not imposed, yet let it be remembered that it is neither recommended to blind approbation nor to blind reprobation, but to that sedate and candid consideration with the multitude and importance of the subject demand, which it certainly ought to receive. But this, as was remarked in the foregoing number of this paper, is more than to be wished than expected, that it may be so considered and examined. Experience on a former occasion teaches us not to be too sanguine in such hopes. It is not yet forgotten that well-grounded apprehensions of imminent danger induced the people of America to form the memorable Congress of 1774. That body recommended certain measures to their constituents, and the event proved their wisdom. Yet it is fresh in our memories how soon the press began to teem with pamphlets and weekly papers against those very measures. Not only many of the officers of government who obeyed the dictates of personal interest, but others, from a mistaken estimate of consequences, or the undue influence of former attachments, or whose ambition aimed at objects which did not correspond with the public good, were indefatigable in their efforts to persuade the people to reject the advice of that patriotic Congress. Many, indeed, were deceived and deluded, but the great majority of the people reasoned and decided judiciously, and happy they are in reflecting that they did so. They considered that the Congress was composed of many wise and experienced men, that, being convened from different parts of the country, they brought with them and communicated to each other a variety of useful information, that in the course of time they passed together in inquiring into and discussing the true interest of their country. They must have acquired very accurate knowledge on that head, that they were individually interested in the public liberty and prosperity, and therefore that it was not less their inclination than their duty to recommend only such measures as, after the most mature deliberation, they really thought prudent and advisable. These and similar considerations then induced the people to rely greatly on the judgment and integrity of the Congress, and they took their advice, notwithstanding the various arts and endeavors used to deter them from it. But if the people at large had reason to confide in the men of that Congress, few of whom had been fully tried or generally known, still greater reason have they now to respect the judgment and advice of the convention. For it is well known that some of the most distinguished members of that Congress, who have been tried and justly approved for patriotism and abilities, and who have grown old in acquiring political information, were also members of this convention and carried into it their accumulated knowledge and experience. It is worthy to remark that not only the first, but every succeeding Congress, as well as the late convention, have invariably joined with the people in thinking that the prosperity of America depended on its union. To preserve and perpetuate it was the greatest object of the people in forming that convention. And it is also the great object of the plan which the convention has advised them to adopt. With what propriety, therefore, or for what good purposes, are attempts at this particular period made by some men to deprecate the importance of our union? Or why is it suggested that 3 or 4 confederacies would be better than one? I am persuaded in my own mind that the people have always thought right on this subject, and that their universal and uniform attachment to the cause of the Union rests on great and weighty reasons, which I shall endeavor to develop and explain in some ensuing papers. They who promote the idea of substituting a number of distinct confederacies in the room of the plan of the convention seem clearly to foresee that the rejection of it would put the continuance of the Union into the utmost jeopardy. That certainly would be the case, and I sincerely wish that it may be as clearly foreseen by every good citizen that whenever the dissolution of the Union arrives, America will have reason to exclaim, in the words of the poet, "Farewell, a long farewell to all my greatness." And so ends the second of the Federalist Papers, and we can see here foreshadowed the very problems that we have today. We do today have people calling for the dissolution of the United States of America, and I think that's a horrible idea. I think that this experiment in freedom is the only one that is currently ongoing on the planet. That we are not necessarily winning, but we are not necessarily losing. We are fighting the battle, and until we give up the battle, we have the high ground. We have the Constitution. We back ourselves with wanting everyone to be free and equal, wanting people to have a say in their own government, and realizing the restriction that allowing the democracy to take over would give us. Because the loud voices congregate, and the loud voices are the ones that get the grease, right? The squeaky wheel gets the grease, and the people who scream the loudest are the ones that get the most attention. But the backbone, the very foundation of this country, are the people who don't. It are the people who get up every day and go to work and do their job and provide for their family with the notion in their mind that they are contributing to society. That is the goal. That is what the whole intention of this is to contribute to society, to be a worthy participant in this grand experiment of freedom that we have. You get to choose your path, and many people are choosing to go down the path of destruction. The path of dissolution is destruction. The path of civil war is destruction. The path that leads to anything other than more people in our republic is the path of destruction. The more people that we can embrace with the notion of freedom, the better off we all are. And the more people we can convince that instead of dissolution, move is a great thing. The flexibility of our country to have two states side by side that disagree with each other and not come to conflict is one of the greatest things that we have. The fact that you can disagree with your government publicly, out loud, loudly, and not be persecuted for it. That is the strength that we have. That is something that was missing. And the fact that we can defend it to the utmost of our ability is also part of that strength. It's why it's included. Together we are stronger, but when we fall apart, we're like a single stick. We can be broken easily. There's no group. When we're grouped together and we are all working towards equal and free, then we're good. Not equality, right? Not equity, but rather equality. You get the free chance to choose for yourself. That is equality. Everybody gets the same choice. Do we all start the same? No. Do we all end up the same? No. But that is a wonderful thing. Can you imagine if everybody was forced to end up the same? That would be terrible. The Federalist Paper number 3. The same subject continued concerning dangers from foreign force and influence, authored by John Jay in the Independent Journal. To the people of the state of New York. It is not a new observation that the people of any country, if, like the Americans, intelligent and well-informed, seldom adopt and steadily persevere for many years in an erroneous opinion respecting their interests. That consideration naturally tends to create great respect for the high opinion which the people have so long and uniformly entertained of the importance of their continuing firmly united under one federal government, vested with sufficient powers for all general and national purposes. The more attentively I consider and investigate the reasons which appear to have given birth to this opinion, the more I become convinced that they are cogent and conclusive. Among the many objects to which a wise and free people find it necessary to direct their attention, that of providing for their safety seems to be the first. The safety of the people, doubtless, has relation to a greater variety of circumstances and considerations, and consequently affords great latitude to those who wish to define it precisely and comprehensively. At present, I mean only to consider it as it respects security for the preservation of peace and tranquility, as well as against dangers from foreign arms and influence, as from dangers of the like kind arising from domestic causes. As the former of these comes first in order, it is proper that it should be the first discussed. Let us therefore proceed to examine whether the people are not right in their hopes that a cordial union under an efficient national government affords them the best security that can be devised against hostilities from abroad. The number of wars which have happened or will happen in the world will always be found to be in proportion to the number and weight of the causes, whether real or pretended, which provoke or invite them. If this remark be just, it becomes useful to inquire whether so many just causes of war are likely to be given by united America as by disunited America. For if it should turn out that united America will probably give the fewest, then it will follow that in this respect the Union tends most to preserve the people in a state of peace with other nations. The just causes of war, for the most part, arise from violation of treaties or from direct violence. America has already formed treaties with no less than 6 foreign nations, and all of them, except Prussia, are maritime, and therefore able to annoy and injure us. She has also extensive commerce with Portugal, Spain, and Britain, and with respect to the two latter has, in addition, the circumstance of neighborhood to attend to. It is of high importance to the peace of America that she observe the laws of nations towards all these powers, and to me it appears evident that this will be more perfectly and punctually done by one national government than it could be either by 13 separate states or by 3 or 4 distinct confederacies. Because when once an efficient national government is established, the best men in the country will not only consent to serve, but will also generally be appointed to manage it. For, although town or country or other contracted influence may place men in state assemblies or senates or courts of justice or executive departments, yet more general and extensive reputation for talents and other qualifications will be necessary to recommend men to offices under the national government, especially as it will have the widest field for choice and never experience that want for proper persons which is not uncommon in some of the states. Hence, it will result that the administration, the political councils, and the judicial decisions of the national government will be more wise, systematical, and judicious than those of individual states, and consequently more satisfactory with respect to other nations, as well as more safe with respect to us. Because, under the national government, treaties and articles of treaties, as well as the laws of nations, will be expounded in one sense and executed in the same manner, whereas adjudications on the same points and questions in 13 states or in 3 or 4 confederacies will not always accord or be consistent, and that, as well as from the variety of independent courts and judges appointed by different and independent governments, as from the different local laws and interests which may affect and influence them. The wisdom of the convention in committing such questions to the jurisdiction and judgment of courts appointed by and responsible only to one national government cannot be too much commended, because the prospect of present loss or advantage may often tempt the governing party in 1 or 2 states to swerve from good faith and justice. But those temptations, not reaching the other states and consequently having little or no influence on the national government, the temptation will be fruitless, and good faith and justice should be preserved. The case of the treaty of peace with Britain adds great weight to this reasoning, because even if the governing party in a state should be disposed to resist such temptations, yet as such temptations may, and commonly do, result from circumstances peculiar to the state and may affect a great number of the inhabitants, the governing party may not always be able, if willing, to prevent the injustice mediated, or to punish the aggressors. But the national government, not being affected by those local circumstances, will neither be induced to commit the wrong themselves, nor want power or inclination to prevent or punish its commission by others. So far, therefore, as either designed or accidental violations of treaties and the laws of nations afford just causes of war, they are less to be apprehended under one general government than under several lesser ones, and in that respect the former most favors the safety of the people. As to those whose just causes of war which proceed from direct and unlawful violence, it appears equally clear to me that one good national government affords vastly much more security against dangers of that sort than can be derived from any other quarter. Because such violences are more frequently caused by the passions and interests of a part rather than one of the whole, of one of 2 states than of the Union. Not a single Indian war has yet been occasioned by aggressions of the present federal government, feeble as it is, but there are several instances of Indian hostilities having been provoked by the improper conduct of individual states, who, either unable or unwilling to restrain or punish offenses, have given occasion to the slaughter of many innocent inhabitants. The neighborhood of Spanish and British territories, bordering on some states and not on others, naturally confines the causes of quarrel more immediately to the borderers. The bordering states, if any, will be those who, under the impulse of sudden irritation and a quick sense of apparent interest or injury, will be most likely, by direct violence, to excite war with these nations, and nothing can so effectually obviate that danger as a national government, whose wisdom and prudence will not be diminished by the passions which actuate the parties immediately interested. But not only fewer just causes of war will be given by the national government, but it will also be more in their power to accommodate and settle them amicably. They will be more temperate and cool in that respect as well as in others, will be more in the capacity to act advisedly than offending the state. The pride of states, as well as of men, naturally disposes them to justify all of their actions, and opposes their acknowledging, correcting, or repairing their errors and offenses. The national government, in such cases, will not be affected by this pride, but will proceed with moderation and candor to consider and decide on the means most proper to extricate them from the difficulties which threaten them. Besides, it is well known that acknowledgments, explanations, and compensations are often accepted as satisfactory from a strong united nation, which would be rejected as unsatisfactory if offered by a state or confederacy of little consideration or power. In the year 1685, the state of Genoa, having offended Louis XIV, endeavored to appease him, demanded that they should send their doge or chief magistrate, accompanied by 4 of their senators, to France, to ask his pardon and receive his terms. They were obliged to submit to it for the sake of peace. Would he, on any occasion, either have demanded or have received the like humiliation from Spain or Britain or any other powerful nation? And so ends Federalist Paper number 3. And here we see the importance of an informed electorate, because the restriction of the power by the federal government is only enforced by an informed electorate. If you personally are not holding your elected representative personally accountable for the decisions they are making on your behalf, you are the problem. If you are not educated on where you stand on any particular item of interest, right? So it doesn't matter to me what the item of interest is. What matters is that you are informed about it, know where you stand about it, and ensure that your elected officials stand where you do, because the federal government is designed to be a little bit cumbersome. It is designed to be a little bit slow. It is fast enough to act in the time of an emergency, but slow enough to drag its feet and not become domineering and tyrannical. But in order for that to happen, we have to assume the responsibility that is given to us. We, as citizens, have the responsibility to ensure that our elected representatives are actually doing what we have asked them to do, that they are actually in support of our government, that they actually do have our best interests at heart, that they are actually willing to be financially responsible, that they are actually willing to be morally upright. There is a lot of discussion about the separation of church and state, and to deny the fact that the United States is, in fact, a Christian nation is silly. You are allowed to not be a Christian here, but the foundation of this country is indeed due to the fact that we have common religious beliefs, right, that is laid out here. The beauty of the system is that it doesn't have to be exactly the same. There can be no state religion. That doesn't mean that you are prohibited from exercising your right to religion anywhere at any time. You don't have the right to force other people to participate, but you are allowed to do your thing anywhere and everywhere. That is one of the beautiful things about this country. But we do have moral values that must be upheld. We do have stands that we must take. And we must make sure that the people who are taking the stands for us, because we don't want to, right? It says in here that The people who are most qualified will be there, but that's not what we currently have by a long shot. We do not have people we have sought out to put into place. We have instead these pre-selected people who are not what we want, and it is up to us as the electorate to make sure that that changes. That means being informed. That means understanding things. That is part of the reason why we do this, right? Part of the reason why we are doing the Federalist Papers and why we are going to do the Constitution and why we did the Declaration of Independence and why we did the whole Bible study and we went through the Enuma Elish are all for the same thing. It is to disseminate a little bit of knowledge. Most people will not take the time to sit down and read the Federalist Papers, but people have a little bit of time to listen to someone else do it. And so I'm reading it to you so that you can take the time on your drive to work or on a commute, going on vacation, or wherever it happens to be, when you're wasting time and you just want to listen to something, you can get a little bit of knowledge. I add my comments at the end and I try to make them clear because I do have comments. I am very passionate about this country. I love the foundation of this country. I love the flexibility of this country. I'm not altogether happy with the direction that we are going in. I am not at all happy with the decision to, instead of revering knowledge, to revere sports people and mindless entertainers. That, to me, I have great exception to. I have much problem with the ignorance that we foster in this country. We don't foster knowledge, so I want to be a source for people to find a little bit of knowledge. This knowledge is not mine. It is readily available on the internet. It is the foundation of our freedom. This is the rationale that convinced people to vote for our Constitution, which gave, for the first time in history, individual rights to people, recognized the individual rights of people, acknowledged them, and pledged to protect them. It is up to us to take the responsibility of that, to grab what the founders gave us. All of these young men, most of them were in their 20s when these things were done, when the Constitution and the Revolution took off. These were young men willing to take the sacrifice despite the fact that they had not yet lived their lives. Many of us, myself included, have sat on the sideline a lot during this fall of the last 20 years, and it is up to us to pick up the reins of responsibility, to grasp our greater purpose, and to stride into it in the will of God. That is all something that we all should be doing. We're going to go ahead and wrap this one up because I'm trying to keep them all to underneath an hour, and so it is what it is. But hopefully I brought a little bit of enlightenment and not too much confusion to a not too difficult topic. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness are of the utmost importance to me, and should be to you as well. You should be willing to fight. Now, it's not saying that you should go out and fight now, but it is saying that you should be willing to fight for your rights. You should be willing to understand them. You should be willing to understand why we have them and why other people fought for them. And you should absolutely be willing to fight for other people to have them too. To the crew, thanks for hanging out. I appreciate every single minute that you are here with me, and I am praying for you every single day. Until next time, I love you. God loves you. You are perfect, whole, and complete just the way that you are. And this has been Pitt State. Peace.